I can only imagine that the art that is going to come forward from this really devastating time in our world is going to tell the story much better than CNN or any live news feed that we're listening to. And I hope that great art will be one of the positive repercussions that might come out as we retell the story. But for tonight, I'm grateful that we can gather and celebrate artists and celebrate great, phenomenal art right here in Northwest Louisiana. Would you give all the artists a huge round of applause? And if you are an artist who has a work in the show, would you please stand up if you're an artist participating? I think that's most of you in the room, but thank you. Congratulations. Yay. Thank you so much. So much. So on behalf of the Board of Directors of Art Space, and I'm looking, Corey, am I seeing an Art Space board member? Corey Mason manning the back of the room for us right now in the Shreveport Regional Arts Council. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I do want to take the moment to announce, if you have not already heard, that with Caddo Schools closing also comes the closure of the Art Break Festival. So many of you who are artists were lined up to be part of the teaching community at Art Break, but we did hear officially from Dr. Gorey today that there would be no way with students possibly coming back on April 14th and facing testing and facing a very, I'm going to just say highly scheduled end of the year, that trying to do Art Break in the middle of the closing of the year would not work for Caddo Schools this year. So we're sorry about that. And we're going to take a vote in a moment. I would really like to see the literary artist who submitted to Critical Mass 8. Would you all stand up for one moment? Literary artists, would you all stand up? So next Thursday, you were supposed to read your works for an audience. Quite honestly, we don't normally have 250 people come to a reading. I think we know that. We don't. I wish that were the case. And the law is 250 people or more, you have to close. So give me a show of hands if you would like to go on with your reading next Thursday here from 5:30 until 7:30, reading your works. Give me a show of hands. Okay, and how many would prefer not? Well, then we will go on, Casey. We will go on with that. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Also, many of you have heard, I mean, we do, once every 2 years, a fundraiser called Christmas in the Sky. It's been out there that the opening will be on April 1, but I will say we are also canceling that as an event. And when the time is right and the mood is better in our community, we'll talk about that fundraiser, but not yet. So the final bit of disappointing news is that our literary critic, who we were so excited to have, great minds think alike, Ashley Mace Havard, are you here, Ashley? Who is the poet laureate for Caddo Parish, had a great idea, as did Bob Pincus, and we found one of the greatest African-American writers. He's the expert and has written more about Bob Marley, just as an example, than any other writer. He's from Ghana. He spent his early adult life in Jamaica. His name is Kwame Daz, and he lives so doggone far away and has diabetes that his doctor said he could not take 2 airplane trips to come to and from Shreveport. So that would really be 4, because he currently lives and is a professor in Lincoln, Nebraska. But he is a writer of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and plays. As a poet, he's been profoundly influenced by the rhythms and textures of Ghana. He cites an interview that he had about his spiritual, intellectual, and emotional engagement with reggae music, which of course makes him this Bob Marley lyrical genius. He's written this book called Bob Marley, Lyrical Genius Remains, and that book, about Bob Marley as the lyrical genius, remains today the most authoritative study of the lyrics of Bob Marley. I could go on and on about Kwame, but I am going to say that in the course of Lincoln, Nebraska, again, thinking that they were sort of removed from some of this, as most of us did until yesterday. He was not able to send his review for literary. He's promised that just as soon as he can figure out what the whole idea of changing from students coming to class to an online scenario, he is going to provide written review for the winner that he has selected, as well as written review for each of the literary artists about your piece. But he is not here, and the review is not here. So I'm going to read a little bit from the artist statement of the winner that he has selected. I hope you'll bear with me. This is a collection of poems detailing 3 women who are trying to deal with their personal insecurities, self-hate, and cultural misguidance by reclaiming what they believe is truth and satisfaction. These women, in order to make their souls whole, need to believe in the power of healing their culture from the outside in. Here lie 3 women existing in New Orleans, struggling to flavor their gumbo with the remnants from the spice cabinets full of pain, regret, and loose lips. It is my hope that these voices invite us into the world seldom ventured with both open eyes and ears. Do we see them for who they are and hear their chant seldom whispered except in the company of their kin? Here we are, tossing judgment to the side and breathing it all in to our solemn soul space, and hopefully for an eternity. The piece, the title of the collective is Lives Near St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, and the selected Critics' Choice for Literary Art is just knew I was going to get just a minute. Mawaya Bomani. Mawaya Bomani. Mawaya, are you here? Well, I hope you're out there, Mawaya. A big applause for Mawaya Bomani. Thank you so much. And I do believe that you all know that each of the Critics' Choice winners receives a $2,000 commission to create a new solo presentation of their work. And whether that be creating more writings, and we will exhibit it here, creating more visual art, creating a solo performance, we will exhibit it here, we will perform it at the Central Art Station Engine Room, and all of the new works will be presented for you in January of 2021. And we'll all be healthy and happy by then, right? Certainly. New world by then. All right, now I want to introduce the critics who are going to present the Performing Arts Award. And I appreciate that all of the performers were there last night and were willing to say, okay, we want to be just as surprised as the other 2 artists are, so we'll come here to the art space tonight. So first I want you to meet Lauren Smart. Now Lauren, you start coming up to the stage, and then Manny, you will. So Lauren is a journalist and a critic. She's on the faculty of the journalism division. Give her a big round of applause while I introduce her to you. Very good. She's on the faculty in journalism at Southern Methodist University, which is her alma mater for her bachelor's degree. And her work as a writer has appeared in the Dallas Morning News, in Arts and Culture Texas, in Culture Map Dallas, Where Traveler, Cowboys and Indians, American Theater Magazine, and she also worked as the arts and culture editor in the Dallas Observer newspaper. She's done all that since returning to Dallas in 2012, when in New York she was a critic and worked with also some of the big art papers and art guns, starting her world in theater and then moving to visual art and now returning to us in theater. I hope some of you will remember that Lauren was one of our early visual art critics, and I love the fact that Lauren loves you. She is so honored to be able to be a part of Critical Mass 8 and to always come and reconnect with the artists here. And so I thank you, Lauren, for being here and for caring about the Shreveport arts community. Excuse me, I am so sorry. About the Northwest Louisiana arts community. Give it up for her. Yeah. And now let's meet your next great fan a man who's been a part of judging, critiquing the Performing Arts Showcase for 2 years now, and was thrilled to come back in January and do a great review of the winning work that took place with the solo show by Michael Futrell, who I've never pronounced his last name right, and I hope he knows that I can pronounce Michael very well. Manny Mendoza is a career journalist who has written about the arts, culture, and media for almost 30 years, and he's quite young for that. But from 1992 to 2006, he was the staff critic at the Dallas Morning News, covering pop music, television, and theater, and then what happened in 2006 to all critics across the world. It's quite frankly why this program even got started, because the critics in visual art, theater, performing arts all lost their positions when newspapers got tighter and started letting go of the critic part of the production. But still, he was involved in a buyout like about 100 other morning news writers and editors, and it, as with sometimes happens with artists, when bad things happen, a great thing comes about next. He produced a documentary about the demise of print journalism, and it's called Stop the Presses, the American Newspaper in Peril. Tiana, can you relate to that in any way at all? Well, that was back in 2012, and look where we are today. So Manny has had that production, that film documentary plays at festivals and also on PBS. He has also worked as a public relations executive, a journalism professor, and his favorite career of all as an artist, one that I know all of you are going to ask, how did you get that job and where do I apply? He has been and will be again a census taker. A census taker. All right, he's now a full-time writer. He covers dance and theater for the morning news and for the magazine called Arts and Culture Texas. And he's a journalism graduate from the University of Florida. And what we love also, because we're so thankful when we get a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, he has received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Pew Foundation, very prestigious awards. Please, a big round of applause for Manny Mendoza. Chair brought over here.
I might stand, but...
I'm standing because you're standing. If you stand, I'm standing.
Okay, let's stand.
Okay.
I'm taller.
You are taller. I'm not this short. Yeah, help me. This is why I'm not a musician. So we had last night a lot of things to talk about after the showcase. It was one of... we have interesting conversations every time we talk, but it was one of the really interesting conversations as we sort of went through what we had seen, which was really good and interesting. But what we figured we'd do tonight is I'll walk through, since I'm here to talk about theater and spoken word, I'll walk through just briefly what the performances were in case you weren't able to be there. If you were properly socially distancing, you weren't there last night. So I'll walk through sort of what we saw in that realm, and then he'll walk through music. There wasn't any dance. You have only music, right? Oh, yeah. So he'll walk through his realm, and then we'll announce the winner at the end. So I'm going to start with Poetic X, who was a spoken word artist I think we're all pretty familiar with in the community. And one of the things that I found the most interesting about what he was doing last night, I had never seen a spoken word artist work with an ASL interpreter before. And I thought that was one of the most compelling things about it, was watching the ASL interpreter keep up with the words as he was saying them, and thinking about what that means, and thinking about the way rhythm works in our ears, and what that might be like for someone who can't hear those rhythms, and to think about just that moment for me, watching that happen was really interesting, and I would love to see that exist more in spoken word. He also he had some really good turns of phrases and compelling points about gun control in the poem that he was performing. And again, to think about this moment in time and that issue and the way that language can encapsulate something that is hard to talk about in our daily lives, and then also to watch that interpreted visually into another language was really interesting. The next on my list, so I'll skip to Emelle Dumars, who did a spoken word piece where she incorporated music into storytelling about her family's lineage and history in Louisiana, and what that means, and what it means really to be the ancestor of a black line in the United States, even if your family was not brought over here as a slave necessarily, but that you still are enslaved in the culture. And just to hear, I mean, she had some of the most well-crafted lines of the night in her piece, and the music really incorporated and made a framework for what she was doing. Really, it was really compelling. And then, should I skip the next one? Okay. And then I'll go to Willie James, who was interested in thinking theatrically about love and what that looks like in contemporary society, and thinking about how to bring metaphors into the work. He had a red towel that he used sort of to talk about the way he loves his daughter and the way his daughter loves him, and what love looks like for a child versus what love looks like for an adult. And while I didn't love some of the moments about specific people that felt a little too brutally honest about maybe actually real people, I think that there's a germ of an idea there that could be really fleshed out into something that's metaphorically interesting about love, which is something we all really care about. That's all my people. I can't believe I'm already done. It's your turn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to start, I'm going to do this in order. So I'm starting with Joni, and I'm going to butcher her last name. Her.
We all know Joni. Everybody knows Joni.
She's a local singer-songwriter who was here last year at this performance, and I was equally impressed with her. This time she played 3 songs that she said were written shortly after her return to this area from a time of being away. The things I like about Joni is she has a great, I'm kind of a sucker for the middle register. I feel like most people people who can sing can learn how to sing high, but a female alto voice, for me, there's like nothing like it. And her voice is perfectly in that range. She also has a sense of dynamics where a song might start soft and then get more intense and then come back. That's always a great thing in music. And it's not just her middle register, but she has kind of a husky voice that can actually get kind of raspy at times, that I think adds a lot of character to the way she sings. She also writes about interesting subjects, wide range. Last night we had a song both about her sister and her yard.
Which, I have a boyfriend who won't rake the leaves in his yard, and it felt very familiar. Is that too much? Is that too personal?
And she also has a great sense of melody and knows how to write hooks that we will remember. She also had she told me the name of it. It's a Prezio.
Joni, where are you?
Huh? A low boy. So it's like a hi-hat, except it's this far off the ground and you play it like that. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. Then I will move on to LaToya Foster, who I'm going to say had one of the stranger performances of the evening. She was moving in apparently American Sign Language to an Enya song. So it was almost like American Sign Language turned into a dance. Or at times it looked like maybe she was conducting an orchestra. I think there was maybe something there, but I feel like it needs to develop more to become something more complete. Next is Richard Dennis, who performed with a sidekick, I guess I can call her that, named Moni, and like as soon as they started, I knew that this was something special. It had an unbelievable vibe to it, and it just made you feel good without being some sort of a corny presentation. It had both an edge to it and a very sort of inviting vibe to it. I wrote down maybe even invited me for those old enough to know who this is. Maybe a little bit of the Gil Scott-Heron vibe, if people know who that is. And then Kershana Johnson, known as KJ, came up and did a piece that was, well, she did a few songs that were, had like an edge to them. She was definitely talking about some difficult issues. And one of the things that she did that I think other people in the night did is presented a lyric that seemed like it was going one way and then went another way. Because she was talking about being positive and being polite and using etiquette. But then she also let us know that she had been working on her left. So if you didn't respect her, there may be consequences. And then lastly was Tipsy the band, who I'm sure everyone in this room has heard, and they brought their usual sort of bar band vibe of enjoyment and fun that they always do. And
Yeah, we've been singing your song all day today. It's stuck in everybody's head.
And apparently, like, during their performance, somebody appeared to put a ring on it, but I'm told, my sources tell me, I did some investigative reporting today, and my sources told me that was a totally theatrical thing that was, so you never can trust these artists. You know, when you're up there doing something, it might be real or it just might be something theatrical, made up. So that
I was kind of buying it. I was kind of buying it for a minute there, until I was told later that it wasn't real.
So,
You go. You announce it. You want me to announce
really?
it? You go. You?
So
You go.
we are giving this year's Performing Artist Award to Rashard Dennis.
Casey, you gonna get them, we'll get the screens in together? Let's get your picture with the two critics, please.
Photoshop you all together. Okay. Hold up those chairs. 1, 2, and 3.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
I think you could do better for Rashard. It's worth another taco. Thank you. Moni, thank you. Wonderful. And thank you, Manny and Lauren, too. So what they did just then is what you're going to get to come back to tomorrow. So let me just say, tomorrow, before we introduce the visual, because I know once we do visual, you all are all going to want tacos and lemonade and tea, and then to go downstairs to Parish Taco and get beer. But let me just say that once again, I want to note that in literary, your individual reviews are not ready yet. They're going to be emailed to you individually when Kwame can get things settled next week. But if you are a visual artist, watching or here, and if you are a performing artist and would like more detail about what did you mean those women looked a little too close in that theatrical production that I did, okay, you can come tomorrow morning from 10 o'clock until 11:30, and we're going to be reviewing the shows, your performances and your visual art one-on-one. Visual artist, here's how it's going to go. Shantae is going to probably start right here at this corner of the room. This is the top floor. She's going to walk all the way around it with a wireless mic. If you're here, you'll say, I'm here, I want to hear my review. If you're not, she's going to walk on past. After she's done the whole top floor, she'll say, did anyone arrive late and wants to hear their review? And she'll go back over to your work. Then she's going to go to the bottom floor, the first floor, and she's going to do the same thing. Start in one corner, walk all the way around. If you come in late, she's not walking backwards, but at the end, after she has done the first floor, she'll say, did I miss anyone? I'm happy to go to your work. And after that, she'll say, did everyone get a review? And if you did not, you'll take her to your piece and she will do a review. Do we follow that? Performing artists, you will be, Lindsay, is it on the mezzanine? Did I lose Lindsay again? She moves so quickly. On the mezzanine, the literary artists, on the mezzanine, the performing artists who would like to hear more from Manny and Lauren about what they thought about your piece and some suggestions they might make, that review. Again, 10 to 11:30, we'll have donuts and coffee. We know it's a little early for artists, but then tonight's a little bit early too. And speaking of poetry and poetic, who was spoken about from the very beginning, the month of April is Poetry Month. Poetic was first discovered by the National Endowment for the Arts during Poetry Month when the chairman, Rocco Landesman, was here in Shreveport and heard Poetic perform his first piece for the National Endowment for the Arts. And so Poetic will be leading up a month of every Sunday from, is it 3 to 5, Poetic? 3 to 5 in Caddo Common. It'll be our first regular Sunday programming, and would that more than 250 people will come to hear poetry every Sunday, but we're going to do it regardless, and if we hit 249 people, then we'll be gatekeepers and send the other ones home. So that's all free in Caddo Common. All right, now I want you to meet Shantae Robinson. What a thrill to have this bright, new, young, although she says she's not as young as I think, doctoral student who is at George Mason University and is on the faculty there and also working on her doctoral studies. She has a big, huge background, and to try to encapsulate it rather than read what she says about herself, I'm going to do my best to remember what she said about herself over the times that we've been together. So though right now she's in Virginia near Washington doing the George Mason thing, she thinks of herself and trends more to Atlanta, being an area that she would call her artistic home, not where she was born, but her artistic center. She's written about art for many publications, including Burn Away, Arts Atlanta, Arts Black, Afro Punk, Number Incorporated, Black Art in America, and Washington City Paper. She's presented scholarly papers on at the Northwest Modern Language Association, at Feminism and Rhetoric, or about Feminisms and Rhetorics, and at New York African Studies Association, among many, many others. We'd be here all night if I told you everywhere she's been published. What I do want you to know is she was also a participant at Burnaway's Art Writers Mentorship Program, Duke University Center for the Documentary Studies of Digital Publishing Project Editorial Fellowship, and Q Art Foundation's Art Critic Mentoring Program. She brings a depth and a perspective to how she thinks about art that I think we have not seen in the 9 years that we have been doing Critical Mass, and I can't wait to hear what she thought about this exhibition and her comments about the artists. Please welcome Shantae Robinson.
Thank you, Pam, for the wonderful introduction. I just want to say before I get started that there are a lot of great artworks up on view, and if you haven't looked at them yet, please do after we finish with the program. They are pretty awesome, and it wasn't easy to just narrow it down to well, how much? 12, which is 10% of the works up here. So we thought that 10% would be a good number to talk about. that were somewhat outstanding from the others. So I'm going to talk about those, and then at the end, I'm going to announce the winner. Okay, so with a nod to Picasso, Purpose by Parker Turner uses a modern and sophisticated technique to allude to Cubist aesthetics. While the image is playful, there is a seriousness to it that makes the animalistic and humanistic indecipherable among one another. The bold colors are tamed by the striking lines that harness the image and composes the sensual figure. While the figure is at the same time bold and subtle, the painting makes a striking statement about the dualities that are inherent in all personalities as not solely wholesome or deviant, but all at the same time synonymous. The line down the center of the artwork alludes to that duality and asks the viewer to consider the double consciousness that we may all possess.
Say the name of the
Oh,
artist.
Purpose by Parker Turner.
Parker Turner, okay.
So that was the first one. Okay, I'll be clear on the names. Polybarracks by Jacorian Jackson, okay, is a sculpture that employs clean lines and complex shapes to create an artwork that is simple in idea but complex in rendering. The structure of the artwork is reminiscent of an axe, but the shapes used to create it are interesting past the obvious. They seem to lean toward an understanding of the balance between the fatal and the mundane. The bland color of the material juxtaposes the salaciousness of the object. It is more than just an axe with a formation at the center that is left to center the balance. The opening at the head of the axe is an element added to it that asks us to question the impartiality of the use of the tool. The artist is saying more here than may allude to the balancing of perhaps unjust systems. And that was Polybarracks by Jacorian Jackson. Spirit Tree, Cries of My Ancestors by Deborah Roberson is an admirable work for its sentiment. The remembrance of those unjustly lynched in an occurrence in this culture, in this country, that is an occurrence in the culture of this country that we should remember and seek restitution for. The strong figure of the tree that is central to the photograph of the artwork symbolizes the strength of a people who have survived the experience of horrific injustices. And the noose that frames the photograph is directly associating the strength of this tree with the ancestors and the descendants of the ancestors who may have been lynched. But perhaps the tree alone, without the exterior noose, could have been symbolic of those who suffer from this all too common occurrence in our history. The weight of the tree alone could serve as a reminder of the lynching, while at the same time alluding to the strength of the people who collectively have survived a horrific history of terrorism and fear for their lives. The tree could have been representative of the strength and fortitude of those people. The texture and tones in Navarre Morning by Edward Nader are calm and refreshing. The painting implies a landscape and a line of the horizon, but the colors are even more calming than what might be a lush image of the sky and the sea. Though the minimalist painting is reminiscent of works by Agnes Martin, the texture on the canvas offers something extra that a plain beige canvas wouldn't. Upon close inspection of the artwork are figures that I am not sure are meant to seep through the painting, but are a bit distracting when looking closely at the painting. From a distance, though, this painting is nicely constructed using compositional knowledge to make for an effective use of the space on the canvas. Flowetry by Yolanda Barnes is a highly aesthetic artwork that uses interesting media to create a beautiful painting of gray tones. The glass used to create a sparkling canvas is placed well on the canvas that has contemporary aesthetics in mind. The glass lends itself to a contemporary aesthetic that asks for luxury and bling. The metallic look of it works well with industrial designs and would work well in contemporary spaces. But the hard lines of black and silver behind the glass are a bit stark and distracting from what would otherwise be a pretty canvas. The materials on the canvas could have stood alone without the lines that make the painting a bit too rudimentary. Had this glass been added to the silver canvas, the glass placed on top of the canvas would have stood out more instead of being weighted down and encumbered by the black and silver lines. Graphic design was used in a painterly fashion in Roaming the Prairies by Kevin Langley. Although created on a computer, the artist replicates a painterly hands in the depiction of the artwork. The buffalo in the artwork do not look mechanized, but are as if they were painted. The use of the buffalo's body to depict the landscape was a smart and good use of space on the canvas. The renderings of the buffalo are realistic but painterly. The space that the myth of the buffalo exists in might have been put to better use in rendering the lushness of nature, but it also alludes to the lack the buffalo have to exist. The artwork is used conceptually as well as formally to make a statement about the buffalo's existence and the fate of grazing on non-existent land. Moon Runner by Housham Khorasani is vibrant and active. The colors are energetic and depict a horse in motion swiftly. The color choices are not typical of paintings of animals. The purples and grays are not typically associated with horses, perhaps with unicorns, but painting a horse with this color palette makes a statement about the kind of horse depicted. The horse is not a racing horse or a rodeo horse, but a horse that of a little girl's dreams. The brushstrokes of the painting are strong and swift, alluding to the motion of the horse, but the arrangement of the horse on the canvas restricts the idea of the horse in motion. There is no space on the canvas to give the horse the space it deserves. Giving the subject more space on the canvas might have alluded to the direction in which the horse is moving and allowed there to be some space if the canvas was horizontal instead, allowing there to be more motion of the horse. The clean brushstrokes in Honk If You Love Canada by Jennifer Hurd utilizes excellent technique to render an elegant portrait of the Canada Goose in military garb. The almost realistic painting of the Canada Goose is professional for its rendering and clever for the associations the artist makes with the goose and the Canadian military gear. While this artwork is well painted, I'm prone to wonder what the rest of the artist's works will look like. I wonder if this is representational of a full body of work. From the artwork, there is not a theme that alludes to what other artworks might be in this collection of the artist. And I'm not sure if a full collection of the artwork with Canadian geese would fit well into the collections of collectors in Louisiana. Patchwork number 4 by Jason Phipps is a vibrant artwork that is reminiscent of quilt making. It readily looks like patchwork quilts, almost perceptibly so. The colors draw the viewer in and the patterns are simple. The painting alludes to the rich American tradition of quilting, but could be more complex. Though many quilts are made with this particular pattern, there are other patterns the artist could have employed to depict more intricate quilt making. Quilting, as derived from many cultures and imported to the United States, takes many forms, and experimenting with different shapes and colors might make the depiction of quilting a little bit more interesting than rendering the standard pattern as used in this painting. Maria Marco's Cato Lake Textures employs beautiful color and impactful framing of nature. The existence of the land in this photograph is remarkable. That something so beautiful could exist in nature is definitely worth a photograph. The framing of the photograph shows off the beautiful landscape of the location, but the image is a bit flat and could have been rendered to show the depth of the landscape from a different angle. Perhaps using the rule of thirds could have been employed to make the photograph more interesting, as there was not a lot of attention paid to the composition as an active tool to create an interesting shot past the inherent beauty of the nature. Triptych by Steve Porter is a very contemporary artwork that is in line with the common contemporary trends. This nod to animation that is popular among many artists today is done well. The psychedelic colors depict the meaning of the artwork and traditional icons of psychedelic imagery. The rendering of the triptych is effective in creating continuity among the three canvases, but it might not be enough to reduce common tropes in order to reimagine the trip of Baha'is to create a whole gallery of artwork. The work seems very specific for this one theme, and I'm not sure the rest of the body of the work by the artist would get past the psychedelic colors and animation. Okay, now, so those were the ones that I thought were worth noting that I mean, like I said before, there are a lot of great artworks in here, but now I'm going to announce the winner, and the winner is Joe Blum's Burned. Is he here? Okay. Well, I'm going to read what I wrote. It's a little bit, so. The artwork chosen for this Best in Show has many qualities that allow it to emerge from the rest of them as the most engaging. From formal to conceptual, Joe Blum's Burned is engaging on many levels. The sheer composition is so striking, it is inviting from across the room. The details beg for closer inspection. When approaching it, they hold your attention and summon you to interact intimately. It is not certain whether the subject depicted is a woman or a man, which allows the painting to appeal to anyone. Though the viewer is not allowed to see the face of the subject, the atmosphere surrounding the subject allows us to get a good sense of the contemplative outlook they are experiencing. We are able to see, along with them, the miraculous object of their contemplation. The beautiful autumn sky at dusk that captivates the subject also enamors the painting's viewers. The scene itself is enchanting, and we can imagine that the subject is just as entranced by the sky as the viewers are with the painting. The formal qualities of the painting are just as appealing as the conceptual ones. The realistic depiction of the back of the subject's head with loose hairs blowing in the wind shows keen technique and careful rendering. The hairs on the subject's head are painstakingly painted, allowing the viewer to see individual hairs. This close attention to detail allows the viewer to feel as though they are in the scene, standing right behind the subject as we both look at the night sky. The rich colors allude to the warmth of the season in the nighttime scene. Though the subject is still, there is movement in the painting. The leaves are blowing in the wind as they fall from the trees on a breezy day. The light and shadows on the clouds allude to their movement in the sky, and the impressionistic painting of the trees alludes to their blowing in the wind. While the subject is still, everything around them is moving. Conceptually, the artist decided to paint a scene that we are all familiar with. It is the autumn sky at dusk. But this solitary scene is so well rendered that it allows the viewer to feel as though they are experiencing what is usually a fleeting scene again. The artist captures for the few minutes during dusk so that we can hold on to it just a little bit longer. This familiar scene has a visceral quality that conjures memories of warm and beautiful autumn nights that we may have seen but are unable to hold on to. The setting sun is not present in the painting, but the glow from it warms the mind's eye. The choice made in this artwork were all made to make us feel as if we were in the scene. The choice to omit the subject's face in the painting allows it to be of anyone and possibly extends to all of its viewers. Through this painting, we are able to witness the picturesque autumn daytime sky from an ideal vantage point. The painting could be interpreted as a solitary and solemn scene, the loss of summer as the new season approaches, but the choices the artist makes to include the viewer just gives us a sense of that the subject is not alone in the scene. There's a scene that the subject of the painting is witnessing this autumn dusk sky with all of us. Thank you.